with other people,
Yes,
what's happening, that would be really awesome, because it's just like engagement with the public. You know, the more we can talk to them outside of a chamber and in community ways. So that would be really, really awesome. I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, thank you. In fact, I have done that on a couple of occasions with you for migrant events. But yes, so there's two things that happen. Sometimes I get a personal invitation in terms of being chair of the role, and it's individual and not transferable and all of those things, as every one of you will have. And some of them I do just pick up through Andy's newsletters and generally touching base with the community advisors to see what is coming up in the upcoming month, and then I usually check with them whether attendance would be useful, and there's either a role for me or just attendance. So, so honestly, I do actually pick some of those up through Jovi's newsletter, through Andy's newsletter.
Yeah, I do that too. Yeah.
Andy can come to those, but I will endeavour to make an effort to circulate more widely those things that aren't individually invited to me.
I just noticed from Councillor Young when because of when you look on his Facebook, used to look on his Facebook, and he was on lots of occasions, but they never came up neither in Jovi's report or any report. They were just invitations that he thought, well, would be good to go out to the wider.
No, I agree. We should all be out there. In fact, I'd quite like to see many of us out there as we can.
Cool. Thank you.
To make a good point. Thank you, Councillor Mallett.
Thanks, Paula. Hey, you've already just touched on this. In your first paragraph, you talk about we need to improve our public consultation around the why, not just the when. Can you just give us some examples of what the why would be? This is in relation to communication on the 10-year plan.
And in particular in the library. What I found in terms of the correspondence that people have had with me, or phone calls, is they're not understanding why we're either on hold with a project or we're advancing. They understand some of the basic aspects about what's going on in the library, but they do not understand the complete why. Why we haven't made a decision yet, why we've had to delay and those kind of things. And I think my view, and that's the same, it's a personal view, but my view is that we do need to start telling people why council has either had to get more information or has taken a different route, and I don't think we're always as clear about that as we could, because I do think it helps the community to understand the what if they understand the why behind it. And as we go through the pool this afternoon, for example, we'll be visually observing things, and that will answer a lot of the why around the work for the pools, and we'll be there, but of course the public won't be there.
So we have comms team that send out press releases, I guess you call them. Are they inadequate, or do we need more of them, or do you think there are other channels we should be using?
Well, it's just my personal opinion that we need to focus our communications on the why, not just the what. That's my observation from what I'm finding. People come up to me and they're, what's happening with the library, and then they go, well, why are you doing this with the library, or why are you not doing this with the library? Why are you concerned about the water world? And it's always the question is,
but I guess, Paula, I'm asked how do you think we can make that better?
Well, I suppose it's a directive to staff, actually, to work around explaining those projects. And I think governance can actually, through its reporting, focus a little bit more on the why, not just the what.
Because it is important. You want to have an educated, informed community. But I'm just not too sure how we would address it.
I don't think it's my job to solve it, but I did want to raise it because I do feel strongly that that's what I'm hearing, is a lack of understanding about the mechanisms and the why.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point. Paula and I have talked about that. So it's pretty much about tweaking. I think our regularity of what we go out with from meetings and things like that, we put out a summary, is fine. I think Paula's right. It's just about how we message that. So we just need to improve that a bit more.
Because we have the media at all our meetings, and then we reinforce that with I don't know what you call those things, statements. The PR that our comms do. And then,
So a really simple example was when the dive pool was half emptied for repairing the pipes. When I discussed this with Lance, it was half emptied, and the people knew that it had to be half emptied because the pipes. But what they didn't understand is why it still couldn't be used in part. They didn't understand why it wasn't fully emptied. Why is it half empty then? Why aren't they fixing the pipes? But of course we know that you can't fully empty the pool, or the pressure's going to pop up, or the tiles are going to come out, and things like that. So people, and when I spoke to the group out of the hydrotherapy and said, oh well, you know, there's a reason, there's an engineering reason why you can't just empty a pool overnight and refill it. They were like, oh well, that makes sense. You know, it just made sense to them all of a sudden, and there was a reason why you couldn't continue to do your aqua jogging at the same time, and it was this, and the why just satisfied all of their concerns, went away then. In that instance. A bit simple, I know, but yeah. Okay, Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and apologies for my lateness. Just following on from Councillor Henry, we get on the invitations things, and often I'm sort of, my head spins around when someone says, oh, went to this, went to that last night, and it may be personal. You know, we get an abundance of emails at times, so sometimes things slip through. But I know that the Mayor's office has a very good process that when invitations go to him in general to, you know, for Mayor and elected members, that gets disseminated out. So I was just wondering from the governance manager if we get any other general ones that sort of don't go to the Mayor's office and that would go, I don't suppose they would go to governance, but just your view on sort of what our policy would be in that situation?
Occasionally we do receive into the generic HCC governance email address, we do receive invitations, and if that's ever the case, they are circulated by the members. Okay. So there are no invitations that we receive that we edit. Out. We send them on.
Can I also ask, there's been a number of organisations that have emailed to generic email addresses like the CEO one and invites, and I've made sure that they've gone through to the governance group when they've come in as well, just to make sure they're disseminated out. And also for the council-related activities, we're trying now to put those into the executive update as well, to put those there just to make sure there's a process for that. We're trying to join the dots. We still have civic, community, council, and then stuff that's loosely related. We're trying to do our best to feed those as we become aware of them. What we try to do is when we become aware of ones that haven't come to the right email address, we go back and tell that party to make sure they email it to the right email address so it gets captured going forward. Not always successful because sometimes you're dealing with volunteers that do different jobs at different times, but we do our best.
Thank you. And I just follow on with the comment. I mean, I certainly don't have any problem with any elected member receiving personal invitations, because we all do that and we all have our areas of interest, and that's absolutely appropriate. But just as long as Councillor Henry's raised, as long as we're not sort of losing any in the mix of, or dare I say it, somebody sort of holding some to themselves that may be, you know, of interest to others. But thank you.
Good feedback, and I do think we can have a think about that. Maybe Andy and I can have a chat about that too, because and Jovi, because I do pick up a lot of the migrant and community sector things through that regular newsletter, and then on top of that I do get some invitations, which I do the same as Martin. If I can't attend, I default to my chairperson and I've been defaulting to Councillor Henry, as Councillor Yong suggested, for some of the things that I couldn't attend, and she has been going, which I'm grateful for. So yeah, but I will. I think all of us on a personal level, it's a good reminder to share some of what we know is going on.
Also, hard to know sometimes if you get an invitation. The way it's done, you assume that all your colleagues have got it as well. Yeah. And there was a Scots Presbyterian Church the other day which came through in the Mayor's office. Councillor Casson and I were there, but I think as long as we, you know, you talked about Andy's newsletters, if we've got a common rough point that we discipline ourselves to read it and go through the stuff, that's really useful. But yeah,
okay, well, we could have a think about that.
There always, in the end, there'll always be falls between the cracks, obviously.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Oh, you're up for a question now. No, you are not. It's gone. Thank you. All right, have somebody move the report be received? Councillor Casson. Someone second it, please. Councillor Tooman. All in favour? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. That brings us on to the next item, which is the General Manager's report on page 17.
Thanks, Councillor Paula. Just a couple of pieces of information in there. I'll just get Andy to give a little bit of an update on the review of the Central City Safety Plan and the work that the task force has been doing, and Councillor O'Leary might want to add in as well, being the chair of that group.
Kia ora tātou. I guess I just want to make a few points in terms of Lance's report. Things have significantly improved since 2014. The action plan that was adopted by Council in 2014 had 25 actions, and some of those have significantly changed the space that the Central City looks like. I think about the increase of the CCTV network, I think of the change to our City Safe offices, I think about the establishment of the People's Project. In 2014 there was large public conversation around synthetic cannabis, and there were some unsafe public spaces that have all been improved, and so we sit in a space which is really different from 2014. And so point 5 highlights some of the successes that have come out of the whole suite of actions, but particularly those things I think are worth noting and remembering what has changed. Do want to just pick up on point 7. We've potentially not going to be able to meet the 31 October deadline. We've got some members who are away upcoming, and we think it's better that we get a great product rather than a rushed product. And so we want to take a little bit of time to ensure that we, when we come back to council, that the task force is really, really happy with the new plan. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor O'Leary, would you like to make a few comments on that before we take questions, or?
Yeah, look, yeah, I guess just on the extension date, I'll save my comments on the review of the wrapping up of the current plan through debate. But I'm actually away for 3 weeks in October, so I've kind of put a fly in the ointment there, and so staff also would like some more time. So I think Lance has got a date that suits his team, so sorry about that.
Okay, no problem.
Saying by February 2018, so maybe delivered before that. Just so elected members, we've got a pretty busy LTP program coming up over the next 8 or 10 weeks, and we don't have a lot of committee meetings. I don't think we've got any committee meetings in December. Leanne will correct me if I'm wrong. I think we just have a council meeting, so it starts getting challenging with Christmas jumping in as well. So quite a heavily workload for both staff and elected members. But I think just reiterating Andy's point that if we bring anything back, we want to make sure that you know, it's as robust as possible, and that we haven't rushed something. I think not that I want timeframes to slip or anything like that. I just think it's a reality of the situation.
Thank you. So now we'll go into questions. Councillor McPherson.
I'm looking at point 5, Andy, there, and thanks for the report. The last 2 bullet points there, talking about the increased number of employees and businesses and the retail spend, to me, that's the key issue that's driven the improvement in perception and safety and that in the central city. And I'm going to ask for comments on this. I think with more people doing business in the CBD, you increase activation, which improves safety and improves perception. I think a lot of the rest is a...
So, Dave, sorry, this is questions.
Yeah, I'll start again, shall I?
No, you can debate, but in debate time.
I'm not debating. I'm asking, as I said before... That's debatable. Yeah, Gary's debating whether I'm debating. Apart from the first point, would you say that, what's your comment on the suggestion that I'm making, that it's the economic changes or improvements that have driven the others? So that's the first point. The second point relates to the first bullet point in 5, as to whether you think that the housing of all the people in the central city has driven the problem further afield the homelessness problem. And I'm referencing a comment that I've had directly from the Director of Mental Health Services at the DHB, who said that it's become increasingly hard for them to find accommodation in Hamilton for their clients that are, for instance, exiting from full-time care out into the community because of the success of the People's Project in the CBD. So that's a couple of points.
I guess the question of economic growth and perception of safety, which comes first, is probably highly debatable, in the sense that as people come to the central city and spend longer and spend more money, or their feelings that it's safe to come and do that. So I think it's hard to categorically say one came before the other, but I do think they create part of that great picture of what's happening in the central city. I know that from the anecdotal conversations that we've had doing this surveys over the years, there is noticeable differences to the physical environment and the people who are interacting. I think research around the world would say that the more people you have in a space that are doing positive activity, the less you would see people who are doing negative. The police stats are pretty convincing that they're doing some really good work as well. And so, you know, that's not just an increase of positive activity. I think there is a decrease in some of that negative as well. I wouldn't be able to say A plus B equals C, but I think altogether it's been a really significant space over the last 3 years that a lot of people have been doing. And it's not just council. I think the collaborative effort across the community has been really significant in making change. In terms of the People's Project, I think personally that they have a massive amount of work that they've done that can't be underestimated. The reality is in 2014, before their establishment, we didn't have people collectively working together for that housing first model, and we didn't have organisations who were able to advocate on behalf of some of our most vulnerable, and we didn't have people who were able to almost force open some doors. Does that create a challenge on our housing in terms of some of our other stuff? I think, again, not trying to be coy, I think there's a really complex thing in terms of our housing, and I think that's changed. In the last 3 years, the housing conversation has changed significantly nationally, and I think the work that they've done has potentially squeezed some of the potential availability, but I think they've actually leveraged greater opportunities, particularly in the private sector, that wouldn't have been there before their establishment, and I would argue possibly wouldn't be available to some clients without them existing and working really hard anyway. And so I think we still as a country have some things we have to address within that housing space, but I don't think it's just been a potential. Your question around has things just been kicked out, I think we might hear some of that anecdotal stuff, but actually that's not the full picture. I think we've actually got people working across the city making some significant change and impact.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson. Councillor Mallett.
Thanks, Paula. Andy, on page 20, there's the big fold out. The third column is actions. The first action is expand the CCTV network. I just noticed that there's no tick beside that. Is that a oversight, or is that still? Are we still working on that?
The CCTV network has been expanded, but it hasn't provided a 360-degree coverage. So that doesn't have the tick because we haven't quite made that 360.
That can be achieved and will be achieved, or we can't do it?
My understanding is part of the 10-year plan conversation, there's still increased money to continue to expand that network, which will be needed before we hit 360.
So when we approved this quite a long time ago, in the last term, did we not fund enough for that, or why did that not happen? Why is there not a tick there? Was it not technologically impossible, or did we not give you enough money, or?
It's not my expertise, sorry.
No, correct. There wasn't enough money to do the full network, and also there's a requirement to upgrade our internal systems to take the amount of data coming through the pipes, if you will.
Okay.
So you need to make the pipes bigger and the engine at the end bigger to cater.
So did the council at the time know that we had short change is the wrong word, not give you enough, or has it just grown bigger than we thought?
No, I think it was a conscious decision to keep the budget over time. I wasn't here when the 2014 was there. I wasn't here at that decision, but through the budgets we've made since, it was simply because the budgets that were given would seem to be deemed to be correct at the time, and then this was always going to be phased out over time. So I think the action is to 2017. So. Okay, so the status of that is now nothing will get done until more money is approved in the 10-year plan, is that right? Yeah, so there's to get to that 360 degree, that would be part of the 10-year plan.
So we'll see that coming through in our discussions of the 10-year plan thing?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gallagher.
Running through the General Manager, with regard to the report, excellent work that obviously Councillor O'Leary and others are doing around the city safety. We recently, with a number of councillors, attended a community meeting in Dinsdale with regard to community policing safety. So I guess the question I would have is there any intent for that issue in terms of, while we have a role more perhaps of advocacy around the community policing and safety? Councillor Casson was there, spoke as well with that. Councillor Leary and a number of you were there. Would that kind of stuff around what was happening in our neighbourhoods come to this committee? Also, with regard to social housing, the second question is the report. Now, there was a social wellbeing, social indicator report that was then lifted because obviously we felt, some of us, that the stats were somewhat outdated. So there are the two sort of really meaty issues in my view that would obviously, I think would be good for this committee to have an update on. And I'm wondering, perhaps, do I direct that through the GM first?
I might just get Kelvin to talk about your first point, because his team have liaison with the police and with that matter, which has been brought up before.
Yeah. So, Deputy Mayor, what we do have in the 10-year plan discussions coming forward is the options as identified in the Frankton plan and Hamilton East plan for extension of city safe patrols to those areas, because those are identified actions within those adopted plans. The Dinsdale discussion has happened as of recent times and isn't yet included within those discussions. But the use of that resource could certainly be entered into at that point.
That's a very helpful answer, but I want somewhere for this council to blowtorch the head of police and say that while this is theoretically operational, we as community representatives understand community policing. So I'm talking about advocacy. Which committee? This is the committee where I believe we should have that discussion. I'm just wanting to perhaps, whether I put that aside to the debate, because I'm just trying to think of a bit of a work program here. So I think that's a very important component, but it's really how our plans to roll out our city safety patrols might interlink with the operations of the New Zealand Police around the clear demand for community policing.
Okay, so that's a question at the moment. Would you like
a response
to it?
I'll flag. I'm going to bring that up for debate and explain, develop that thing a bit more. The second one was around social housing, and that was just about are we going to receive some kind of, because there are some very proactive developments happening. I respect that, but I'm relating that social housing to the social indicator report that's being updated, and whether it's the GM or Andy on that one. I think that's a future piece of work we need to be looking at.
We are definitely updating the social wellbeing indicator report currently. Obviously some of the data in that is related to the census, and the next census hits in March next year, and so we won't have that data until the beginning of 2019. So rather than postpone, rather than kind of wait for the perfect and never get anything across the line, we will bring an updated report that will still have some census data, but we'll have other figures updated. In terms of the social housing element of that, that can definitely be used as a launch pad for a conversation.
But when do you anticipate the sort of a revised, prior to the next census social indicator report to be available?
I don't have that date right on me, sorry, Councillor, but I can disseminate that through.
Well, it just seems I would make the point that for our 10-year LTP, our LTP process, that's crucial information. And I'm not going to be in a position, you know, because obviously that's giving a bit of a tapestry, a bit of a context with huge challenges. Because, yeah, so perhaps I'll save that a wee bit for debate, I'll expand on that theme a bit more, purely because I think there's some crucial data in addition to all the excellent data we're getting that would be of help to us.
Can I just, my recollection is when it was brought up several months ago, that we said we would bring back the next draft, for want of a better term, to a councillor briefing so that council can tease out A, the information, and B, some of what you've been alluding to, what is council's role and what do we want to advocate and what actions do we want in line with our current direction of travel. So, and I think a couple of the matters that you've brought up were mentioned at the time, so that was our intention.
And I certainly acknowledge that with some of the figures, it's a constantly moving target. You know, I'd have said that. No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor O'Leary.
Madam Chair, I was just wondering if I could assist the Deputy Mayor. We had a social, we were part of the social housing strategy, and that seems to have fallen off our list, and I think that might be what he's referring to. I chased it up around outside and found that I think it's sitting with Link people. I've asked for an update on that and haven't had an update, but if someone in this building would have been part of that as well. So I think that's certainly well overdue to have. I understand it just sort of disappeared, so we need to.
So we can make that reappear and bring back maybe in the GM's report a bit of an update on that.
Yeah,
happy to do that.
Where it's gone, who's leading it,
so we can
what
note
happened.
that down. I'll get Leanne's team to note that down as an action from this.
Yep. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I think these some useful points. Councillor McPherson.
Lance, just on what you said before, I think your recollection's right. The question then is, when will that come back to a briefing so that it can inform our LTP discussion? If there are some councillors that wish to have us being proactive in any way, whether it's advocacy or ownership or whatever in the social housing area, sure, that'll need to be quite soon, won't it?
Yeah, that's correct. What I'll do is I'll talk to Andy offline. We've got a series of workshops and meetings. I think everyone's diary is pretty full with those. So I can undertake that. We'll bring that back during the next 6 to 8 weeks so that can be incorporated into council's thinking. Obviously, that'll go hand in hand with all the information that Kelvin's team's collecting around growth and Chris's team around infrastructural requirements and those sorts of things, because I think it's what Councillor Paul has talked about too, about getting the full picture, so for your decision making. So I'll make an undertaking that we can bring that information back. That was going to be in Andy's report, because I think there was about three or four items which I think you and Councillor Martin, Deputy Mayor, brought up around those statistics, and you wanted updated information on that. So we can do that over the next few weeks. I think
particularly, perhaps a bit new is the social housing stock and demand and that sort of issue, because we didn't. I'm not sure we specifically raised that in the same conversation you're talking about, but in relation to this point, it's sort of become obvious.
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll go away and find out what information we can get within that time frame to be included in the LTP, and how current is it. I think that's quite important too. So we'll. I know the Salvation Army have just brought out their recent report. I think about 2 months ago, Alan Johnson presented their report again. There's quite a bit of information out there, but I think.
But some of that's national or big scale?
We need it granulated down to a Hamilton level, so we'll see what we can find out, and we can put something out in the executive update to let you know what information we can collate.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, councillors. Are there any further questions before we go into debate? No? Okay, well, the recommendation is just to receive the report, but is there any...
Oh, Madam Chair, what about questions on the library, or are you doing...
Oh, no, I wasn't, but do you want to make any comment on the library and then take questions?
No, it was sort of really following on from what Councillor Gary brought up around comms and what you brought up in your report, Councillor Paula, just around after we've got the council meeting on Thursday to discuss the library situation and make sure that we've got clarity of communication around the why as well as the what for the community. And Jeff Neem's been working on a communication strategy for that once we debate that item on Thursday.
Are there any questions on the library that people would like to raise that haven't been answered or won't be answered on Thursday? Councillor O'Leary, you have a question? Or?
Well, I did, but I could just save it for Thursday. We're having the full conversation then, aren't we? So,
yeah. Over to you. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, no, I'll leave it to them.
Any other questions, Councillor Matt Gallagher? No? Okay, so
just something came to me.
Sure.
Right. With the library, so just one question. So, if we decide to open it up or do the repair to have it earthquake strengthened, is there any other thoughts about it, or is that what's coming up on Thursday that we do some more like with the frontage as well, or we just leave, or then we just concentrate on the earthquake strengthening?
There's quite a few options in the report, so so once you've had a chance to read that report, then feel free to contact myself or Rebecca Whitehead if you need any more information on that.
Okay.
So the minimalist option is to fix what we've got there now and get it back open. There is another option which Councillor Paul has talked about before, was the opening up the front option.
Yeah.
I think there's a very low-cost version of that, which probably isn't overly effective compared to one which is, in hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. So, but we can answer those questions on Thursday.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I've been holding my questions till Thursday as well around that, but I guess it's a fairly broad report on Thursday, so there's plenty of scope for councillors to ask those questions or indicate alternative points of view than are proposed. Okay, so we'll go into debate on these items.
Yes, just and to the degree I'm dealing with both your report, your chair's report.
Oh, sorry, hang on, wait, 1 second. Mover and seconder, sorry.
Can we add to the recommendation, Lance's, the date for the task force, the safety task force, to be extended to February 2018? We have to do that, don't we? Because it's in the...
We checked, there is no date in the original resolution, so we don't need to, but you can note, if you like, a new date, if that keeps the committee accountable.
Do you want to note it in the recommendation, Councillor O'Leary?
Yeah.
Okay, so you'll move the staff recommendation with that addition?
Yes. Thanks.
And do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Toomey, thank you. Now we're in debate. Councillor Gallagher.
Angela, can you say what the date is?
Is it 28th of February?
Yeah, by the 28th of February. 2018. Yeah, 2018.
Okay. Now we're into debate with Councillor Gallagher.
If it's leap year, we'll be a day early.
Councillor Gallagher.
Yes, and in part I'm referring, I think, to a bit to your chair's report and the GM's report. I just want to start first of all around the city safety and central city safety. Yes, we see progress there, but a number of us attended a community meeting in Dinsdale, and where I use the word blowtorch, I mean blowtorch for whoever's going to be the new Minister of Police and the head of police, because our role as a City Council is obviously to do our bit in terms of providing, maybe rolling out city safety patrols and being part of the solution. But I'm hearing from our community loud and clear again and again and again about these property owned by the New Zealand Police that are dotted around our community: Flagstaff, Clyde Street, Dinsdale, Norton, Varden Road, that are basically closed for public, And we seem to have this conundrum where we're told that the experts tell us that this community policing model doesn't have currency, and yet we've got other experts like Councillor Casson and I think Councillor Turman who say actually this, you know, given their professional background, this is a model. And I think we should have a view, and I think this is the committee of a whole, this is our community committee where that stuff should be transacted. And certainly I would anticipate when we have our 10-year plan discussions, we will be talking about our safety team, but this is about partnership, just like we talk about schools, you know, shared recreation reserves for the school grounds, playgrounds, just like, and this is one area of partnership. So that's one issue. I think certainly the sooner we discuss at this committee an updated social indicator reports, and again I do acknowledge and feel, because the figures are blimmin' changing so quickly, you know, that it is hard, but I think if we can localise, particularly with regard to the Salvation Army report, the stuff that's been done, and we update ourselves, for example, on the social housing strategies, that may or may not have relevance to our long-term plan. Next week we'll have a better idea where the government of the day sees a greater role for local government in that space. I think that's very important. I think, and I note that, you know, we're looking at how we go out there and engage with critical groups, but I'd certainly be suggesting that perhaps we may want to brainstorm as a committee at some stage and say, you know, at what point do we want Community Waikato to be there to invite them to give us an update as to the incredible, valuable work that they are doing, for example, and there are other bodies in terms of the brief of this committee. And I think we need to, without creating more talk shops, more talk festivals, giving the poor staff more blimmin' reports to write, I think this committee, as you would agree, Madam Chair, has a key role in capturing some of that social indicator stuff. And while we don't deliver the service, we need to be very focused as a city to advocate and go in and do some lobbying. And I think, I'm just using the community policing, I think is possibly a really good idea. But I certainly look forward to, with our LTP through the workshop process, for some of those items to come back to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you. Look, I don't have any problem with what's written in the report. It's what arises from it in my mind that is still an issue, and Martin certainly touched on some of them. I think the withdrawal of community policing was a very big retrograde step that's caused community safety problems maybe everywhere but the central city. I think, and I've said this to staff before, I think our own withdrawal of community advisors from out in the community into a central point has not helped, but it's been nowhere near as big an issue as the community policing one. I think whenever we do look at something like the Central City Safety Plan, we need to look at the whole picture of the city and maybe the surrounding area as well. When we talked about the Hoons and their cars recently, we realised it wasn't just a Hamilton problem, it was a Hamilton and all the surrounding area problem. And the same thing happens here. And I mean, I've received direct evidence that while we've housed everyone pretty much, or close to everyone in the that was homeless or in that category in the CBD, we've got massive problems elsewhere in the city, and partly due to lack of supply, but also there's no focus on some of those areas outside the central city, and we need to get that focus going as well. I think the point that I had the discussion with Andy about before is valid. When you look at shops filling up, increased spending in the CBD, it is going to be easier to drive a better perception of central city safety. It's quite true what Andy says, that's not the only answer, and the two have got to work together, sort of thing. But we shouldn't think that we can always solve things in a particular area just by putting some more physical things in the city. That we have to do some economic things and some other policy things as well, probably. But also we really have to engage outside agencies, and until we successfully engage with the police and some of the other central government agencies, and I don't mean them attending talking shops and producing coffee table books, I mean them actually changing their plans on the ground, their implementation, till we can do that. We're only going to be able to look at little silos and little pockets. We need to actually be looking further afield. It's not us providing all the facilities and resources. It's us driving the discussions and ensuring that those that have the resources put them out appropriately in our city.
Thank you. Councillor Casson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for the report, Lance and Andy. Look, I agree there's been some real good work done around the city, and I have noticed a change in the last year. But I echo both Councillor Martin and Councillor Dave's comments regarding community policing. I think a lot of the good work actually comes down to the Hamilton City Council and the city safe team doing their work, and other like the People's Project and everything else getting in there. But I do have an issue with statistics that are brought out by police to say that the Central City is crime's down by 36% since 2013-14, and crime is the lowest it's been in 25 years. I do take issue with that. Being a police officer, I'd love nothing else than to say that those stats are correct. I have a daughter in the police. I have a lot of friends still in the police, and I'd love to be able to say that that's correct, but it's not correct. And this morning I was on the Victims of Crime site on Figures New Zealand, which shows that crime in Hamilton is in 2016 was up in almost every facet, apart from blackmail and extortion and abduction and kidnapping. So everything was up. So to quote Mark Twain. Facts are stubborn things, but statistics are pliable, and that's what these are. So, you can make a rod for your own back by, and I think that's what the police have been doing, by saying that crime's down, because then they find it hard for resourcing, and the community policing model was working. Since the community policing model has been stopped, there has been a noticeable difference in the communities. And a lot of our vagrants around here are mobile. They're not just stuck in town. They do get on the buses and move out to the different areas and start doing their begging and harassing of people. So it is very mobile at the moment. So look, though we cannot dictate where police resourcing is placed, we as elected officials for the city do have a right to ask questions and strongly advocate for such things as community policing to be made a priority in the city. The re-establishing of the Central City Beat section, which was paramount to Central City safety in the past, which we do not have anymore. And I'm of the firm opinion that it is the good work of Hamilton City Council and City Safe for the perceived safety in the Hamilton City.
Thank you. Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Agree with the points raised and made by my colleagues. I think the key to this, to the good outcomes achieved from this plan, was that we did it together, and it was a collaborative approach, and it was the first safety plan of its kind for a city for a metro city in New Zealand. Since then, we have had several visits from Christchurch, Tauranga, South Auckland, Hawke's Bay, and Wellington, asking, approaching staff, approaching myself, saying, what did you do and how did you do it? Because they're sort of 3 years behind now and are dealing with some of the issues that we decided to tackle back in 2014. So I think actually as a city we need to be proud of that. Have we fixed everything? No, you can't fix everything. Generally, time moves on and new issues arise, and of course, as we've seen, housing is quite a significant issue. I think 20% of everything in this plan, 20% increase on people's perception of safety, the improvement of safety during the day and at night is a good thing, and 20% is actually quite a large movement. So I'm quite happy about that. Why do we manage perception? Because in actual fact, all the world over, and some of the reports and things I've read, actually it's the only thing that you really can measure in terms of public safety, other than specified crimes, is someone's perception of whether an area feels safe or not. In response to some of the questions or comments made around housing, the People's Project act as, or first of all, most of their stock majority of their stock is from the private sector. They find landlords and they become the safe broker. So if a vulnerable person struggles and can't pay their rent, then the People's Project actually pays it for them, and that's a very unique proposition from a private social agency. Certainly, the government doesn't have quite a kind hand, and if the rent's not paid, they get a warning and then they're out on the street. So I think that's quite significant. And the other thing is the People's Project also have their own stock, starting to have their own stock and manage some of the larger housing availability. So it's not, in terms of, I guess, cannibalising social housing, they certainly haven't done that. I think they've cracked open the private sector a lot more to people in need and vulnerable people, because they're the safe partner in the equation, and I think that's quite significant. I think as a community, and support everything the Deputy Mayor said about community constables in the meeting that we attended to, it would be my wish that when we come back with a new draft plan in February of 2018, that there will also be a recommendation from the task force for the staff to go away and work up a plan on how we can tackle and contribute as local government of the area safety, the wider safety. And we have a few levers to pull, and City Safe is a significant one. We are the only city in New Zealand with a substantial unit of City Safe officers, and again that's something we need to be very proud of, and some of the comments have been. So I think that there are things that we can do. We can increase patrols, we can look at our CCTV network, and we can work and be the lead agency for other groups that are working quite successfully around the city in terms of increasing that safety perception. Because while we want, and I'm certainly in big favour of community policing, just because it's not being done doesn't mean to say we can't have an impact and we can't contribute in that space, and then we shouldn't just step away and say, look, it's police's role to do it. If they're not going to do it, someone has to provide that level of comfort for the community. So I think that that's possibly what will be included in the recommendation when it comes back to this committee in February. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Henry.
Yeah, thank you so much, Madam Chair. I just want to quote from the law of attraction: whatever you talk up will grow. So if we keep talking up crime and all this stuff, it'll just grow. I agree with most of what my colleagues said, and I think safety in numbers. So enabling more businesses in real estate in the city will immensely help, and it will bring energy and positivity into the city. And I think having a good picture for the rest of the country and overseas people, we need to stay positive about what's happening in Hamilton. It's a great city, and yeah, we need to talk up the positive more than the negative. But I think everybody's doing a great job here. Thank you for what City Safe has done so far. It's just amazing, and hearing the history on it. Thank you, Andy, for that, telling us that again. It's just really awesome. So thank you so much.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Paula. Yeah, I just want to add that I think the committee has there's been some promising signs there, and I think Councillor O'Leary's been doing a fine job there. A few things that have come out to me during the committee's work is, I think, just the complexity, the mental health and addiction issues out there. I think we've got something really good in City Safe. And I think Councillor Casson is right. I think that City Safe actually should take a lot of credit for what's happened. And I feel we're in a good position with City Safe, and I think maybe there just need to be a few tweaks along the way, or we need to step back and decide what do we actually want City Safe to be doing as a council, and then give them a consistent direction. So I still think there's a bit more dialogue needs to go on with City Safe, but I think we're in a good position there. I think other cities would love to have something like that. to me, the one of the big issues still unresolved is the police role in the CBD. We've had 2 or 3 police officers turn up to every meeting. Councillor O'Leary, I think, used the term in the last meeting where she said police need to have some skin in the game, and I think we all felt that way, and by that we've been quite insistent that we want to see a bigger presence in the CBD from them, whether that's patrol. Well, I think patrols is the preferred option from us. Some sort of, in fact, as one of the items we're discussing, I think it goes along the lines of police identify the CBD as a priority area with staff tasked to provide a timely response to calls of service. So that's something we're pushing very hard, but actually I want it to go a bit further in terms of a stronger, more holistic sort of presence. So I think progress is being made, but that's something I think if we don't win that little battle, I won't be happy with the result when it comes back. Thank you.
Mayor King?
Yeah, so can I just remind members of what the police said during some of the committee meetings, the City Safe committee meetings, and they made it very clear that they have limited resources. They can only do so much, but those resources are ring-fenced for Hamilton, and that they indicated that if we had earlier closing hours for CBD licensed premises, they'd redeploy those same resources back into the CBD for day patrols, and they made that quite clear, and they basically laid that out in a way that gave us an option as to whether we wanted to pick that up or not. There's also been a feedback from the police that the CCTV system is extremely good. They'd like to see it a 24-hour manned and expanded, and that they believe that that's a way that they can respond very quickly and very directly to incidents as they unfold, and will be there on the scene, you know, through the feedback from a council-run CCTV system feeding straight through to the police station. So I just think that's something that needs to be considered going forward. And I think it was feedback that, interestingly, nobody in the committee asked a question on. It was a very quiet. There was not a question asked about those proposals from the police.
Thank you, Mayor King. I just might make a few comments myself. Oh, sorry, you got one more. Sorry, go, Councillor Tim.
Yeah, it's I suppose the wheel goes round and round and round, of course, and community policing, of course, I think community policing is, you don't get much satisfaction from talking to a building, and that's basically all it is. It doesn't mean to say the police are there, because the building won't answer you back. But I think what it is, it's perception. I know a few years ago, of course, police moved to what they call prevention first, because they got sick and tired of going back to the same address every day of the week. I know there's an incident in Cambridge here, which I can quote, there were 180 calls for service from the one address over a 12-month period. So what you've got to do is look as to why is this person always calling for the service. And if you work with that person, you can actually reduce that. Just last night I was at the graduation of what is known as the Right Track program, which is a program which is highly supported by this council and DHB, the justice system, whereby I think there was 18 persons graduated, and between them they had just over 450 offences, mainly in the area of driving while disqualified, alcohol impaired driving, boy racer convictions and all those sort of things. And that runs over a 6-week period. And it's not just the police involved, but it's the whole community involved. These people are actually taken to the mortuary where they get explained to them what happens to them when they're on the slab. they're taken up to the intensive care unit where they see how these people who come in from motor vehicle crashes and that are all wired up to be kept alive. And when you look at the cost of repairing a body of $900,000 to a serious injury motor vehicle crash, and if somebody dies, it's 4.7 million, I think it finally sinks in. And one of the beauties of this is they have the learners and then they have what they call a support person. So the support person must always be attending to each session. I think if you're in a position whereby you've got a burglar who's on your premises, or you're getting assaulted, or there's a domestic going on, and you call for service, you're not going to be too worried who turns up, whether it be a dog handler or whether it be a uniformed constable, whether it be a detective, or whether it be a road policing guy. All you want is a police officer there. And when I look around this city, what I see, of course, is the police vehicles are actually not in the wealthier areas of the city. But if I drive around some of the lower socio-economic areas, I very often see a police vehicle parked on the side of the road, whether they be attending an incident or making inquiries or whatever they may be doing. And it's really targeting to risk, as far as I'm concerned. Probably you'll see a very little presence in Rototuna of police vehicles. You'll probably see a very high presence of vehicles in places like Norton or those sort of areas. And I think what it is when you look at this report, I think it speaks for itself, because I think what it is the real world out there is what people perceive it to be. And I think what's happening now is the perception of the city is that, hey, things are definitely getting better, and the more people we can get living within the CBD, I think the perception is going to change, and really the safety in numbers. So it's a national police policy, of course, is to go down the track of prevention first, because as everybody has said, they have limited resources. There's no two ways about that. And if we can actually turn these people around, we're going to be a far better community in the future. My thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Toomey. Just a couple of supportive comments around that, because I absolutely agree that it's a multi-stakeholder, multifaceted approach that's required, and we can work with those partners, which are the social agencies, the community at large, the police, and then of course the City Council has its role, and we need to, I support the work of the City Safe Working Party. I've attended, I'm not a formal member of it, but I've attended the meetings and found them to be very productive, and those conversations and ideas are emerging, and they have been challenging. There have been some challenging comments made around various roles of stakeholders within that, including the police, and the police are coming up with some ideas that will inform the future discussion. So I think Angela's doing a very good job in bringing those things all together. I think we have to be careful of just targeting one sector with criticism, because we risk weakening the cohesiveness of the group and the relationship between all the parties, because it will be only as strong as the weakest part. So we all have to play our part, in my view. I think for the city's contribution, there are many things that we can do, that we should be doing as a matter of good business, and that includes good quality urban design. As we create public places, they've got to be designed with public safety at heart. So totally supportive of the CCTV approach. That's pretty standard in any notable sized cities around the world now, that public behaviour can be caught on camera, and that does give you that level of confidence. And then there are the other matters that we've already talked about, such as lighting, improved lighting and improved street furniture and the placement of street furniture, and all of those kinds of things do actually create a safer environment, or the opposite. So it's about interweaving the whole well-being of our public into the things that are core business for the city. So look, I'm looking forward to it. I think Councillor O'Leary is absolutely right that we are best to land this properly rather than try and sweep it through, because there is a wave of community concern right now that it would be tempting to kind of jerk into action there and produce something quite quickly in response. But what we want to do is to build on what the good results of the previous plan and go forward with an even more robust plan. And Councillor O'Leary is also completely correct that the safety issues that cities face evolve and change and are ever changing, as they are in any other city in the world as well. We're seeing things in New Zealand as a whole which are alarming, which we're going to have to address as communities. That includes a lot of those ram raids and smash and grabs and intrusions into dairies and things that are violent. And of course, we've seen locally the horrible impact of that. And so, you know, we face those challenges together as a community, alongside the police, alongside the local community, and alongside those social agencies. I do believe, however, at times it is the role of local government to push those messages back up to national government and say, hey, there is not enough funding here to help us. And that may be around community policing. It may also be around the money that goes into social agencies dealing with a myriad of social problems across our communities who are also struggling. And we know this because they come to us for funding for their projects and solutions. So, and I do think that is something that we can think of as a council. Once the government is established post-election, what are our messages back to government around what we need to achieve? Okay, those are my comments. You have spoken. Yeah, add one thing. Go.
I'm just wondering whether it would be helpful or not, Madam Chair, as I know many years ago, and Councillor McPherson, remember, I used to attend a monthly meeting of the Old Works Committee, I think we used to call it though, and give an update as to what was happening. I'm just wondering whether it would be beneficial if maybe twice a year or something like that we could get the City Area Commander of Police, if she could come along and maybe give us an update of what's happening within the organisation, and that would give councillors and that an opportunity to maybe put their ideas forward and have a question and answer sort of session. And I think that may well be of assistance to all councillors here.
Thank you. That's a good idea, and I think we can discuss that with Councillor O'Leary as a way to kind of push that up to council through the process. That would be excellent. Thank you. Okay, thank you for the debate, and I guess we can tell how strongly we all feel about keeping our citizens safe, the fact that everybody has wanted to debate this issue, and so thank you for your good feedback, councillors. Somebody move, please, that the report... We have moved it. You have moved it. Oh, right. Yes, exactly.
And I didn't need to speak first as the mover of the motion.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay.
See what happens when you have a holiday.
Yes, that's right.
And then you have to get back into work. Thank you, Councillor O'Leary. So it's been moved and it's been seconded. All in favour? Opposed? Carried. Yes, and we are going to take a comfort stop for 10 minutes. Back at 10 past. And the public, there is some coffee, and it's quite good coffee in the...
So we'll do another week in Clarence Street, and then we can do because the staff...
Yeah, absolutely. So we're just going to move items around to do Matariki, Clarence Street, and then... Yeah.
See you.